Hey class, it's Bob. In this video I'm going to walk you through the process for creating a critical path method or PERT chart. We've got an example I pulled from your text, and I just want to walk you through this. Each node you see here, A through H, represents an activity. So something that has to be done, something that has to get completed in the process of completing a larger, bigger project. So this diagram represents a couple of things. It represents the time needed to complete each activity, and it represents the precedence of the activities, the order in which the activities must be completed. So, for example, you can't complete B until you've completed A, as indicated by the arrow from A to B. You can't complete activity G until you've completed activities D and E, for example, as indicated by the two arrows coming to G. The number in each node underneath the letter is the duration of time that that activity will need. So for example, activity A needs 3, let's say weeks, could be days, could be hours, whatever, but let's say weeks. Activity B needs 3 weeks, activity F needs 3 weeks, and so on and so forth. So in this way we've illustrated an entire project. This would be a relatively simple project in that it only has a handful of activities, but that's all we need to demonstrate this technique. What we're going to do is determine something called a critical path, and we're also going to determine for each activity, A through H, we're going to determine the earliest we can start that activity, the earliest we can finish that activity, the latest we can start that activity, and the latest we can finish that activity. And I'm going to walk you through how we do that right now. And in the process, we'll identify the critical path. The critical path, by the way, is the duration of the project. The length of the critical path, I should say, indicates the duration of the project, or the shortest we can get the project completed. I'm going to draw a legend over here. I'm just going to draw some brackets. If you haven't done so already, you probably want to pause the video and write out the same diagram on your own paper. Write it pretty big because we'll need a little bit of room to write other things. But we're gonna use this set of brackets on each activity, and I'm going to write the earliest start, the earliest finish in the lower left and lower right, respectively, corners of those brackets. And then I'm going to come back and I'm going to write the latest start and the latest finish for each activity. So this is the legend. I'm going to have 4 numbers in each set of brackets on each activity. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to draw a bunch of brackets. And let's see here. I'm going to have to write small up there at the top, won't I? Oops. Let's see. Need one for F. These are the brackets for F, E, C, H. Okay. Now then, let's fill those in. What I'm going to do, and what you'll want to do, is you want to start at the far left. Start with activity A. And we're going to work from left to right, and we're going to determine the earliest start and the earliest finish for every single activity on here. And then we're going to work backwards, and we're going to figure out the latest start and latest finish for each activity. So activity A has no activities that precede it. So I don't need to complete anything before I get started on activity A. Another way of saying that is the earliest we could start is right now, or times 0. So I'm going to put a 0 in the lower left-hand corner because it corresponds to the earliest start of activity A. Now I'm going to ask myself, if the earliest I can start is week 0, or now, and the activity takes 3 weeks, what is the earliest I will finish? And you should realize that that is week 3. So I'll write a 3 in the bottom right-hand corner, which indicates the earliest I can finish activity A. Okay? Now, at the point you get bored with me saying all this, that means you probably understand everything, but bear with me. So activity B, the earliest I can start activity B is going to be week 3. And that's because that's the earliest activity A could possibly be done. And I can't start B until A is completed. Similarly, the earliest I could start activity C is going to be week 3. Okay? Now I'm going to ask some dumb questions and answer them. If the earliest I can start activity B is week 3 and activity B requires 3 weeks, then the earliest I can finish week B or activity B is week 6. Similarly, the earliest I can finish activity C is going to be week 5. Again, forgive me, but the earliest I could start activity C is week 3. It takes 2 weeks, so the earliest I'll finish it possibly is week 5. Now let's look at activities D and F. The earliest I'll finish B, a necessary preceding activity for D and F. The earliest I can finish B is week 6. Therefore, the earliest I can start activity D is week 6. The earliest I can start activity F is week 6 also. However, I needed to check something first. What do you think I needed to check? Okay. Let's see if you got this right. Activity F has to have 2 preceding activities, B and C. So I have to ask myself, what's the earliest I'll have completed both B and C? And the earliest I will have completed both B and C is week 6. Activity C is completed by week 5. However, it's not enough to just have one preceding activity with respect to activity F. I have to have both. So the soonest I'll have both B and C done is week 6. Okay, so activity F requires 3 weeks. Therefore, the earliest I'll finish activity F is going to be week 9. Okay? What's the earliest I'll finish activity D? The earliest I can finish activity D is going to be week 9 as well, because it has a 3-week time requirement. Now then, let's look at activity E. The earliest I can start activity E, it only has one preceding activity, and that's C. The earliest I can finish activity C is week 5, so the earliest I can start activity E is week 5. Okay, activity E requires 7 weeks, so the earliest I'll finish E is week 12. Activity H, earliest I can start is week 5, requires 2 weeks, so the earliest I'll finish is week 7. Okay, let's look at G now. G has 2 preceding activities, D and E. The earliest I'll finish activity D is week 9. However, I can't start activity G at week 9 because I'm still waiting on E to be completed. So the earliest I can start activity G is week 12. And the earliest I'll finish activity G is week 18, therefore, because activity G takes 6 weeks. Okay, now if I look at all of the 3 activities that precede the completion of the project, I have activity G, I have activity F, and I have activity H. And the earliest, or rather the latest any of these will be completed is week 18. Therefore, this project will take 18 weeks. Okay? The project will take 18 weeks. So let's write 18 over here. Okay? Now, I'm going to ask some more questions, and we're going to work backwards, and we're going to determine the latest start and the latest finish. Okay? So the latest start and the latest finish. Well, we're now working with the assumption that this project has to be done in 18 weeks. So let's start with activity G, and let's say the latest I can finish that activity is week 18. And it's not one to write on there, but you can hopefully tell that's an 18. Well, if the latest I can finish activity G is, let me erase that, is 18, and activity G takes 6 weeks, then what's the very latest I could start that activity? Well, that's going to be 12 as well. Now you'll notice with activity G, it's supposed to be at 12 above the other 12. You'll notice with activity G, the earliest I can start is the same as the latest I can start. So in other words, I don't have any wiggle room there. I've got to start at a particular point in time. That means that activity G is on our what's called a critical path, meaning there's no wiggle room. It's critical that we get that activity done in that time, and it's critical that we start at that time. Otherwise, the entire project gets delayed. That's the meaning of the critical path. If these particular activities do not get done on time, then the entire project is delayed. Therefore, it's critical. Okay, let's look at activity H. Remember, the latest we can finish this project is week 18. So the latest we can finish activity H is week 18. Now, we got a little wiggle room there. The earliest we could finish is week 7 if we just went straight through. But it doesn't have to be done until week 18. So there's a lot of slack. There's 11 weeks of slack in there. Takes 2 weeks, so the latest I could start it and still finish the project on time is week 16. Okay? Now then, the latest I have to get activity G started is week 12. Therefore, the latest I have to finish week E and also activity